Hi, I'm William from William Palm Fine Art, and today I'm going to paint a bit of a wintry ocean scene. This is inspired by some of the storms that hit over the last couple of weeks and kind of dumped a lot of snow that we're not usually used to getting. I'm going to be playing with a couple of watercolor techniques today, using probably a minimum palette of color on this one. I want to try to get the ocean, the wintry ocean feel on here. And what I have so far that I'm going to be playing with, I did sketch the scene out from a couple of references already, and I'm just going to keep this as a simple beach scene on a storm day. I am going to be playing with conserving the white. Conserving the white means that the white paper that's here, I don't know if you can tell in the sketch, but right about here, there is a wave splashing up that I'm gonna save that area of white. And I am gonna be playing this in a way that with watercolor washes and be playing with understanding that when I put the paint down here, the paint's going to go basically where the water's wet. So when I wet my paper, and I'm working on New York Central watercolor paper today, I'm going to start with this nice quill brush. This is an Escoda versatile brush set that I got for a gift from my wife. And I'm going to mop some water on here. Now, I love these big brushes because they hold a beautiful amount of water and a beautiful amount of color when I'm doing these initial washes. I'm looking at my reference, and there's a hint of a stormy sky in here. The stormy sky is a little undramatic, so I'm going to take a couple creative liberties with that. To get the color grays on this particular scene, I'm going to be waking up some Van Dyke brown, some sepia, and I am going to be throwing it into my mixing well that does have a little hint of gray. Right now I'm using Holbein paints on this one, and I use Holbein paints to teach my lessons at I teach painting lessons in person at South Avenue Arts in Garwood, New Jersey, and one of the first things I try to teach my students, I'm going to demonstrate this here, is how to play with a color wash. Now, I also do like to do some color notes along the way. So sometimes when I paint, I keep a little book next to me that I could just put color blotches down. So just to make sure I have the right color, I did color test this. I'm going to steal, I'm using a for now, I'm using my sepias and I'm using my sepias and Prussian blue. And to get this storm started, I have a wet paper, and I'm going to mop and push the paint around in little circles. And as I come down the sky here, the sky is pretty drab and gray, and in my reference, the references I'm using, it's a pretty even sky. I'm doing these wet areas, I'm going to paint this right down into the ocean. I'll layer that in later. And when I get around my splash, I'm going to very carefully leave those areas to kind of come together. I'm going to push this around. Hopefully the paper will be wet enough, because the paper should be pretty damp here. I'm not over worried if it was wet enough at the beginning, because I'm putting a wash on that will add some water to the paint. I'm going to try not to overly water this down. I'm going to take some more color. This is the type of thing I'll tell people to play with your colors and explore colors, and just kind of come in here as this paper is wet. I'm just going to kind of come in and make circles. These are a little more dramatic of a blue and brown mix, but I'm trying to keep a more concentrated paint mix here. And basically what that means is there's less water in the paint. The paper's already wet, so when I start to apply some of these touches of grays, one of the first things I'm going to hope is to allow these touches of gray to mix and blend and give me hopefully a little more drama. I want a little more blue in here. Just going to steal some blue. Hopefully give me a little more drama in the sky, and I'm kind of hoping that at this point some of the paint will hold up to the water. This paper's pretty wet, and you're going to see that the colors are saturating away, or bleeding together, I'm sorry. And I'm trying not to overdo the sky in this. I'm trying to get a little hint of murk in here. Now, looking at the references, there are a couple of light spots that show through. And I can play with some lifting out here. And I can kind of roll my paintbrush or even a paper towel into here to pull this back a little bit, where I'm seeing some of these areas of light peeking through the canvas. Now, peeking through the clouds. Now, when I'm playing with this, one thing I like to think about or try to capture is any type of light effects. I'm going to come in here and blend this a little bit by rubbing the colors together. And I am going to hopefully have a nice little play on a pretty stormy sky. And right now, hopefully I don't overwork this. I am notorious about overworking paintings at the beginning like this, but I am going to touch a little more, see if I can get a little more shadow definition. Now, when I play with watercolors, I play with adding lighter value colors first, which means I like to get a foundation on my painting, and with these lighter colors I like to establish light effects or some sort of background lighting, and then I like to use deeper, more concentrated color or darker values to kind of come in and add definition. And that's in watercolor, that can happen pretty quickly. I often like to tell people that when you are playing with watercolors this way, one of the most notorious things I do is I hit a point sometimes where I probably should stop, and like in this sky, I should probably let this set up for a minute. And sometimes one of the hardest things to do here is just to say, okay, stop, let it be for a minute. So I'm going to back, stop, let it be. And I am going to put maybe a faint bit down here. Now, this kind of cloud cover, I am trying to make just a little more expressive and a little bit more dynamic than what's in my actual reference. So my reference, the clouds are pretty washed out gray, and I'm hoping that this will stay in here. I do want to be careful. I'm getting some water blooms in here. A water bloom is kind of when the color, when you put the color on, wet and wet, if it blooms a little bit, that means that you either have too much water on the brush, the paper could be too saturated, or you can be adding darker, more concentrated colors that have too much water in them. All right, moving on to here, I'm going to give, while this is setting up, I am going to wake up for the sand here. I'm going to wake up I'm going to try some raw sienna or yellow ochre, either or. I'm really going to try not to make this green. The sand that I'm looking at in the reference does have a bit of a warm color. And I am just going to quickly come in here and give this a quick little watercolor wash of where I want the sand to be. I think I'm going to wake this up too. I feel like the sand is closer to this color as I give it a little color test. It is on the cool side, so I could pull a little touch of blue in there. I'm going to try not to make the sand green because I definitely don't want it green. I'm going to pull that back, lift that out. Got like, if you make a mistake in watercolors, you can see sometimes it stains the paper. If you do make a slight mistake with the watercolors, you do have a little hint of time to get that out of there. I did not want that to turn green. Let me try this. I'm going to put a little umber in, and that's cool that off a lot more. I'm going to push this around with water. That might be a, I don't want it super warm, but I do want it warmer than the rest of the scene. And I think that can go. I'm going to try this, and I am going to lift this back a little bit, spread it around with some water. And again, this, I'm painting on dry paper here, and I'm just kind of getting a little hint of an underpainting, debating if I just want to throw this, and maybe I'll throw this right up to here. There's some rocks in the scene that I'm going to be adding. And just like that, I'm going to get this little sandy area down in here. And again, while this is nice and wet, maybe a couple of darker marks. It's a little too watery. It's bleeding without control. Maybe a couple of marks going in here. Again, gonna let that set up. You can see how my clouds are starting to set up top. There are a couple of marks that I might go back into later and try to give myself a quick wash out here. Right now I'm just playing with the idea of an underpainting. And then while this is setting up, I'm actually going to work on another part of my painting and get, actually I lied, I'm going to come in here. There's a couple of little spots that I'm going to try to put on while the paint is a little on the wet side. And I'm okay that this is going with a pretty concentrated color. Again, less water. It's almost to consistency at that point. And hopefully it'll give me a nice little natural spread into the sand. I do want a slightly cooler corner over here, and it's okay if it bleeds into what's already there. I'm going to try not to lift that color away too much. And then I do have, I'm going to wake up some blue here. Mix this in. Try not to contaminate my colors either. Sometimes I get painting and I'm like, oh, don't clean your paintbrush before you touch a base color. The base color is like the colors in your palette. Alright. I will leave. I do think I want to get just a little bit more. Just like in the churn here. I don't want that to be. I think at the very tip of this brush, there's a little hint of churning sand in here. Now, the paper's dry, so I'm going to have to really kind of put this where I want it to be. I'm going to cross some fingers and hope that this doesn't, just kind of get these little textural looking marks that will hopefully give me the illusion of water coming up over sand. A little more color here. I'm going to layer that. All right. Go going to steal some more of that blue that I'm using as a base. It's got a little hint of green to it. I'm gonna throw some burnt umber in it, gray it up a little bit. Seeing some hints on the sand. I just more blue in there. So it's this little path of design coming through the sand. I'm gonna try to get the real tip of this brush in some of these areas. So I'm okay if this comes out a little thick and thin. Also okay if this kind of fades into what's already here. Not super worried about every little part right now. One thing I love with these quill brushes is you have a fat body to the brush. It holds a lot of water, great for initial washes. But also, you know, while I'm playing with color in these washes, if I use 2 hairs of some air, I can get some nice little varieties of line in here. And while this paper is wet, the color's concentrated enough to hold up to it. But I am kind of hoping that this gives me a little bit of a spread out. Okay. I think I'm gonna wash that one off for now. I'm gonna take a similar quill, just a little smaller. This beautiful set happened to come in a size 18. Again, it's by Escoda. Some beautiful hairs on this. It's a versatile brush. It's size 10 on here. And this is a size 10 Coinski that I'll be using later on. Oh, sorry, it was in my cup. Here's a size 8. So you can see the change in size. I'm going to switch over to this 10 for now. Figure out the color of my ocean so that I can start getting some relationships of areas that are dark and warm. And I am going to start with laying in where the water and where I want the water and horizon to meet here. And hopefully I did not put this dead center. You can see that tip of that brush on that beautiful quill brush. Going in, papers kind of, I'm going to paint right over that because that's black. One thing I like about black objects in a scene with watercolors, besides conserving the white here, you'll see with the watercolors that conserving areas of light, and like I'm adding a darker mark here, which is just starting to define my horizon line. And when I come in here, all I'm really going to need to do is, more paint on here. I'm hoping that my brush here is going to hold enough color for me to pull that back just a hair. Okay. Alright. Hoping this is going to hold just enough color. I'm going to try to let some of the gray that's already here peek through and get a little hint of chop on the ocean behind this wave. That is getting a little lighter as it comes down into the scene. Move this around with some water. Let it wash out a little bit. And this is kind of dry enough where I'm going to have some patterns of color show through. And areas that are darker are going to look like the shadow on the wave, like in a wave trough, and on the splash, and on the splash and on the white water. I'm going to be using, those will come together so fast with the littlest amounts of gray. I do have some lifting out I want to do here. Got a little gray where I didn't want. I got a little overzealous before. I use some clean water here and just kind of see if I could pull this gray back. Press that with my paper towel for a minute. Sorry, I hit the camera. All right. I can put, there's a little hint of something peeking through there. I'm just going to come back over this very tip of that brush. Try to get thick and thin lines, imitating the patterns that I'm seeing on the ocean. Be careful, I'm pulling that back. I'm overworking that area where you're seeing this little piece come up. I'm going to quickly try to fix it. I'm going to leave that alone because, again, I'm one of the worst people at leaving stuff alone. A couple little marks in here. And I'm not going to need a lot in here. I do have kind of natural black going on, so I'm going to go back to this burnt umber. I'm going to steal some of my blue, and get some initial, I think I'm going to play with Davies Gray on this. Davies Gray is such a great color for this. It's a kind of a bluish black mix. Take a look at my reference here. Before I over worry about that, I'm going to place the rocks in here. There is a bit of a wave splash coming up. Before I even do that, I'm going to pull some of this back. Again, come in here and just lift this out a little bit. It's in the background, but there's a wave right about there breaking the horizon. So you can see I'm pulling that paint back. And it's not a lot, just enough to add some drama back there, rough up that water a little bit. I am going to see if I can lighten that gray and this whitewash here. It's almost like a pale blue. It's fine when I do this lesson in person. People are like, where'd you see those colors? And sometimes I look for, well, that's going to put the main wave closer to us. But sometimes when I am painting a beach scene like this, I try to keep in mind that as objects go off into the distance, they're going to reflect colors that are in the sky. And I do have some blues going into some of those clouds and some of those effects up in the sky. Alright, I am going to come back to placing. There's a jetty over here, a little body of rocks, a little bit of pattern, so some of that grayish white is going to show through. Might even get a little bleed into the wave splashing over it. And there's really, I think I want to put just enough umber in there. Get the initial kind of marks that are showing these rocks. Now these, again, are in the distance. They're kind of in my middle ground space. Got foreground, middle ground, sky's the background. And it's really just enough to say, hey, there's some, you can even see like a hint of base coming off of here. There's even little hints of color that almost looks like it disappears into the water for the wave. And then I'm going to leave the paper dry here. It's going to leave some white marks in that I feel like it's going to have the look of something rolling over, leaving the white and just kind of adding the areas that are underneath. I'm going to come back to this sand mix for a minute because there are, even in here, it's going to be pretty pale, so I'm going to water this down. But there are a couple areas here where I am kind of getting a grayish sand color. It's kind of coming up in here like this. I could push this up a bit too, it would be a little more dramatic. Stealing some more raw sienna to bring this in. There's a little churn over the water right about there. A little churn of sand. And I think, just for drama in the paintings, I don't want this to be overly flat. I am going to get some marks in here. This is going to be pretty pale, just reflecting some of those colors up in the sky. Get some of the shadows coming over here. Again, that's not going to be a pure white in the painting, so I'm going to keep this pretty pasty gray color, kind of like the grays in the sky. It's kind of cool gray. Maybe get just enough something to define some of the water out here. And stuff that not necessarily seeing in the reference. So I'm going to kind of make it up and hopefully not over. Now this is the spot where I'm like, oh God, don't overwork this. And if it happens, I try not to lose any sleep over areas of my painting getting, can come in with some water and soften that a bit. Almost like I'm sketching with a marker. Okay. I think for now, I'm going to try to let that be. And I'm going to start to look at some of these areas in the sky. I'm looking at my camera for a minute to see how that's reading, and I'm about a half hour in. I got a pretty good chunk of this watercolor recreated. When I paint with watercolors, I do try to think about making images that are watercolor paintings inspired by photos and sketches. So sometimes with the water, I just try to let things happen. Whole section there I thought I wanted to bleed in. Got a little blending to do here. I'm gonna actually switch a brush. I'm gonna take out a smaller, stiffer brush. And this is Da Vinci Cosmo Top. Had this brush for ages. Just gonna come in here. I'm gonna try not to lift the paint out, but I am gonna try. There's a couple of spots in here that got a little more color in there, I think. Just a little, not a ton. I'm just gonna come in here and let this making little circles in here, trying not to overwork the area. I'm not sure. Hopefully that helps this. Sometimes I look at the painting and I'm like, got some water blooms in here. I try to blend them away. Or, especially if it's clouds, try to find a way to let it play together. Because I had a couple areas in here that I just felt needed a little something. Gonna let this come out a little bit more. Again, trying not to disrupt what's already there. That's the part where I probably should just leave the cloud alone. All right. Draw out here. Now, while I'm working on this right now, wasn't planning on going too much lighter than some of the grays and whites that are peeking through in the clouds. Again, it's just little hints of something peeking through, even though it's stormy. But if I wanted to later, after this sets up for a minute, I could glaze or come in with a deeper color. So I can hear, and I feel like I want to use a bigger brush for this. So play with the squid brush a little bit. And just come in here and it's a little darker in that area in the reference. I'm just gonna try to get a couple of those. I don't want to overwork it. I'm getting some somebody later is probably going to watch this video and go, why do you keep messing with it if you don't want to overwork it? Alright, I'll let that set for a minute. I am liking some of the areas that are appearing to peek through. If nothing else, that sky is definitely nice and moody. Get a little more mood down in here too. I go and let that run right off the horizon. Smaller marks, they're further away. It's almost going to look like I'm just touching areas. Okay. For now, I'm going to try to leave that be. I am going to come in, play a little bit more. Let's see if I can get some nice marks with this. I am going to play a little bit more with this middle ground area, washing over the sand right in here. Mixing up some umber gray and mixing up some umber gray and raw sienna for this. Again, I can go a little darker. I think this set up enough. Let that run off the page. And try to use just the tip of this brush. Hopefully get some natural marks. I'll warm that up a little bit. It's not super warm in the picture, but I am going to try to get a little something going on. Pull that back. Just delicate marks right here. And something going on coming up over the sand. And this whitewash. I feel like I could play with this a little bit more. Gonna wet my brush a little bit. And now I'm not gonna lose sleep right now if I make something bleed here, but I do want to kill a few areas of the warm white, and I do want to have this look like it's kind of bringing up some of the sand over here. Move that up a little bit. I am going to get a little darker. There's some water washing up right there. It's almost the color of the sand. And a little shadow under there. See if that helps add a hint of definition in here. I want to be careful because I'm going to lose that. If it's too thin, it's going to wash right into what's already there. Come in here. Let this play right around there. All right, I think I'm going to kill off some more of that weight. Just give it a light glaze or something to push it behind this main wave. And normally, just a little more. Now, sometimes I like to come in, give some defining marks. And those would be like shadows. So I do have some little areas of dab that I'm going to do in here. Hopefully you get the idea of the wave coming up over the sand forms. Gonna wake that up a little bit more so it has a little I got wet feel. Gonna let some of this light color show through. You can hear a little scratching. It's gonna put still a little texture there. I don't want to lift the paint, but I did feel like that needed something. All right. Get some definition around now. Then I'm going to attempt to play. Go back into this gray play. Put a tiny bit. Mini. Okay. Might steal a little tiny bit of red there. And I am seeing a couple of potentially violet, reflected, and gray in here. I don't want to overkill the color, but I am going to let these grays play out. And for the wave here, I can kind of do these initial. I'm kind of giving a little quick wash. Again, I'm going to be conserving some areas of white. And areas that are not so white, I'm going to add a shadow. So while I'm playing with this, I do want to flip my eye back and forth at this reference. There is a darker kind of over the rock, over the jetty in here. Jedi. Star Wars now. Over the jetty in here is a hint of rock poetry, because yeah, it's not going to do anything with a lot of paint on there. A lot of water, I mean. But there is a kind of darker shadow peeking in here. I don't want to overdo that quite yet. Just keep this gray kind of coming in, little hint of shadow right there. And again, I'm kind of wetting and waking up the paper here. With these grays, kind of playing with a toned wash. And again, when I do paint, I'm okay if I move this around with some water. I'm working wet on dry right now. I'm gonna glance at this shadow pattern, and again, try to let some of the white show through. Put a little touch of red. Some of these are a little bolder in here. The lightest hint of violet cast. A little hint of ocean showing through right there. So I'm going to steal some of that ocean color from before. That shadow's almost the same color as the ocean. There's another splash coming in here. Now in this, I think one of the hardest things to do is really just kind of let it happen a little bit. And just kind of remember when I'm looking at the value range in here, and looking at how the water is kind of splashing. I'm gonna steal some of that darker gray for in here. It's almost like a hint of a rock possibly popping through. I'm gonna put a little hint of that down in here, and hopefully that will bleed up. A little hint in here. And one thing I try to remind myself of, and try to let that look water splashy. I'm only going to show the color that's peeking through at this point. Probably pull this background just a hair darker in here. Again, hoping I'm not going to overwork these initial washes. I do feel like I want a little more drama in that section. I'm just going to keep playing with these gray notes in the wave for a minute. I also got to remember at some point there's some of this that I'm going to want to just start to leave. And again, if it's a little on the dry side, that's okay, because I'll get little marks and textures from the brush that will hopefully carry me through this. I think one of the hardest parts, again, is really just making those decisions about where to go darker and where to stay lighter. Just kind of almost light blue down in here. Just enough color to some light blue peeking through here. I'm going to gray that up just a bit. You can see the marks I'm getting with the brush are kind of doing some of the work for me here. There is a rock I have to put under here, so some of the definition will come out of here. the shadow coming up there. I feel like there's a warm shadow there though, even though it's a cool day. Sometimes you just gotta trust your gut and say, oh, I see this color, I'm gonna put it here. Now one thing again, and I'll probably come back to this almost any time I do any type of watercolor, this is very direct. So whatever I add here will make some very decisive marks. This is also, again, a type of painting. Let's see if I can get some of that ocean color in here. It's kind of just trying to use a little tip of the brush in here. Just getting little hints of shadow that I'm seeing on this wave. Now another thing I could do in here, if you wanted to experiment with this, I'm trying to conserve the white. But later on, if I want to really ramp this up a bit, I can come back in here with some Chinese white. I know most, it's just something usually, I'm really trying to conserve most of my work for the brush and the water. But as I'm playing with this later on, I can continue, and again, as I touch in here, you can see as this is drying up, I am getting some textural marks. Just slowing down for a minute and trying to get some pattern into these white areas. Horizon peeking some. But later on I can come in with some white paint, or when this is totally dry, I could even kind of splash or shake in some extra dots to make this come to life. And do a little blending down here. Some of this almost, if I make a weird face or squint my eyes, sometimes when I'm trying to see my subject a little more clearly, I like to squint my eyes. And a couple little areas I'm just grazing a very pale gray, kind of hoping this allows some of these white foams to have a little extra contrast. I'm almost picking up little hints of sand color in here too. Just all slow and steady at this part. There is no rush. It's going to be pretty immediate. Going to do my best not to overwork some of these sections. Repeat some of this down in here. A little more blue here. Some in there, some in there. I'm going to gray that a little bit. All right. Hopefully that's doing a little more than I want it to. Push that back a little bit. And to help balance this off, I'm going to come in, play with this rock. I'm going to be making almost blackish color. First thing I'm going to do is kind of, might be a little on the thin side. Gonna I probably should just let that kiss and spread a little bit. There is rock here. Now that's dry, so that's gonna hopefully just lay right on top. Let that show through. It just look like it's buried in the sand. May even see little sand stuck to it. Got a section in here where I'm gonna wake up some more blue. Put it in this homemade black I'm making. A couple little rocks sticking out. Now this is the thing, if I if I start to play with this, this is another one of those I have to tell myself it's okay. With watercolor, if I come in and hopefully, I'm just going to peek one here, couple of darker marks coming off of here. Not a lot. It's only going to be a little bit because it's in the distance. And come down here and just give this a wash. Hoping that sand is dry enough now. Alright. That kind of definition in there. Okay if that layers for now, it's going to be darker. This kind of comes out and juts back up and over. Be careful not to leave some unnecessary. It's going to get a little larger coming down toward us. And get a little cut into there. And I do have hints of sand in here. I'm going to attempt to just graze my brush over and show off the areas that are not sand. I'm hoping as I add this, one of my goals for this particular image is really just to get impression and essence of a cold day. All nice and wintry. Maybe during or before the snow. There we go. Let that come in. I do want to steal some more blue right in there. Couple of shadows I want to add in here a little darker. Edge on this rock. I'm going to be using the very tippy point of this quill that kind of angles under there. Oh, I can go a little darker under some of this wave, make it more dramatic. Hopefully I'm not over whispering there. I can get a little silent when I come into, I can go dark. Can go a little darker there too, just another little coat of paint. Sometimes I want nice, vibrant, nice rich darks. I shouldn't say vibrant because this is not vibrant at all. Nice rich darks, I layer my paint. That's just what I'm playing with right now. So these shadows under here are getting a couple of coats, and then I'll come in later and just kind of, I'm not going to run right off the page in that corner. But there are some marks in here. Use again that tip of that brush, and as I'm adding the paint, what I'm going to go for here is hopefully getting, there's a little more showing through down here. A little edge on there. I can go pretty dark too. Back to that blue. Back into Dave's gray is almost color, the jetty in there. There's a little something peeking through there. And this is the part where I sometimes I gotta tell myself, you need to stop. A couple little scribbles of that just to get the fleck. I'll probably shake that with makes almost like a swirl pattern in the sand. A couple little marks under here. Something covered by the sand right there. And again, you could see how this is coming together. That's going to get another layer right there. I might even be very brave at this point and try to get some of these definitions that have to go darker and keep fading back. And some of them I'm just gonna be brave and use almost tube consistency paint. My paints are weak enough for me to put that right in. And I just keep checking my reference to find where I want these shadows to be a little more pronounced. Like up in here, this curves under. Just making some hatching marks with the paintbrush. And go a little darker and let that come out. Darker in there. That edge kind of disappeared too. I'm just gonna put them back. All right. Think. Couple little definitions that I carefully land in the right spot, I hope. And give a little defining character. Wait, that's going to go under the matte when I matte this. So I do a watercolor painting, I like to when I do a watercolor painting, I like to matte and frame my paintings. The matte protects the painting from the edge of the paper. A little darker under there too. You can see I'm just slowing down and layering these in a way that I hope adds drama. I am doing a little brushwork in here, little almost like little calligraphy marks to break up. A little hint more gray in there. All right. It's a pretty moody looking sky, I think. I could go more into this, but when we're getting about a little over an hour here, I'm just gonna come in again with this homemade black. Do a little actually going to turn that into a dark gray. Get the tower on here. Could have practically just attempt to one stroke this. One stroke just means I'm gonna try to do this and just say, nope, that's it, don't touch it again. Again, it's in the middle ground. I'm gonna get something that I can get a hair more detail with. Just playing in my brushes for a minute, making a choice. Oh, just use this liner. Maybe this will help. Now it's got a round brush with a extra long bristle. That's really kind of for making some really tiny marks. I lied. I was gonna do that in one. I hope I put that in the right spot. And then if I wanted to, I can I'm going to use this Chinese weight. Now, Chinese weight comes with some of these sets, and I am just kind of flecking, praying this doesn't get where I don't want it. Just giving a couple water splash flecks up in here. I'm going to dot a few of these in too, I think. Just a little bit. Now, I usually prefer saving the weight here. But I do find when this is nice and dry, sometimes I like to get a couple little splash marks. And some of them I like to just kind of give a little flick. So I can just go. Now, the little tapping like that, I'm not going to have a ton of control over where these land. But I can come in here and just add a little emphasis back into this. Again, that's something I necessarily want to overwork. I know, I feel like I'm breaking some watercolor rule here. Do double life as an oil painter. So I play with paint, and it's okay to experiment and play around a little bit. And again, just a couple of dramatic marks, I think. There's definitely some splash coming around here. A little bit splash in there. A trickle right there. Alright, and just for show and tell purposes, throwing that in there. There's more I would want to do. I feel like I could almost spend... Gooey just broke. Yeah, I feel like I could almost spend a good bit more time coming in here and bringing more of these little lives to area, dramatizing some of the water splash, putting back some of the weight. So if you do kind of overwork it, or you get stuck, or there's ways you can say, hey, let me try this. Now, this weight's going to be a watercolor, so whatever's under it's most likely it's gonna sink in a little bit. And you do want to be careful when you're painting with this, because I don't necessarily want to contaminate my color base either. I try to keep the weight pretty pure in here. It doesn't always work out that way. I can put a couple little trickles back in here. Kind of disappeared when I was having fun laying in those blacks and grays. Kind of hoping this pattern adds a little more something to the drama of the work. A couple white splashes in there. Almost like I'm stippling little dots. Now, I play with this because this question came up in one of my classes. So if I overwork an area, or if I can't get the weight to stay, what can I do? And you can do a couple of things. For this, I'm using Chinese white. You can try drawing in with a acrylic or a white ink as well. I have students who enjoy adding definition with a gel pen. And at this point, it just kind of really depends what you're going for there. So in here, I felt like that got a little lost, so I'm going to put it back. A couple of directed splashes. And just for demo purposes, I might be done with this in a minute. I might come back in and either try it again on a different painting if I'm not overly thrilled with it. I can always make a different painting, or I can also make sure all the weight's out of there. Be making some weird grays. A couple little last minute additions. I try not to do this before the weight, because if I get the weight paint on this, it's just going to turn into, bring that out a bit. All right. Well, I could keep playing with this, but I think I have the essence of what I want. I'm going to force myself to stop here for a minute. I could take a look at this later and make any other decisions. I think with the video, about an hour and 15, and with some watercolors and a quick sketch, we have a nice little stormy beach scene going. Again, probably a little more expressive than the photograph I'm using. I do want to get a name in here, and I think for now I'm just going to sign on this side in sand. And I'll get my first initial and my last name on there. When this is dry, I write my name and a title for the piece on the back. Kind of keep a record. I think I'm working on 9x12 paper today. So I got this nice little 9x12 quick little watercolor painting going. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, hit like and follow and subscribe for more. Thank you. Have a good day.